Good morning. Hope everybody's doing well today. I had a great weekend. This is a Monday morning for me. I don't know about you folks. Did some hiking and enjoyed myself outside. I hope you did too. We are going to be continuing to read about the ancient Roman civilization. Do you remember what civilization is? Civilization is really important to remember. Civilization is a group of people living together in a well-organized way. People in a civilization build cities, have a writing system, have leaders and laws. They practice religion. They grow their own food by farming, and they have different people doing different types of jobs. Not everybody has the same job. So we're going to continue to learn about the Roman civilization today. And today's lesson is called The Roman Gods and Goddesses. I think that you will be really surprised when you hear about the Roman gods and goddesses at how similar they are to another civilization that you actually studied last year, the Greek civilization. But let's scoot back to Rome. Take a look right here. This is the city of Rome on the Tiber River, country of Italy, continent of Europe. Okay, this is the continent of Africa. This is the continent of Asia. And this entire yellow part sort of was the Roman Empire and how far that extended. Do you remember the Mediterranean Sea? There's ancient Greece. Here's ancient Rome. This is the Atlantic Ocean. Okay. We talked a little bit about a civilization. Make sure that you can list off those 6 things. If you can stick with me tomorrow, we will be listing them off again. See how many of them you can say before I get a chance to say them. Think a little bit about what a legend is. We heard about a legend of Romulus and Remus. Okay, so what's the difference between a legend and a myth? That's sort of a hard question. A legend usually involves real events or real people in history, such as Romulus and Remus. We think there really were 2 people like that. But the story about them is often exaggerated, and all or part of it can't be proven to be true. Mythology is a collection of myths or stories associated with what people believe about a particular people, and it explains why people act in a certain way, how things came to be, or how things happen in nature. That would be a myth. A legend usually involves some real people and some story. Parts of it are probably true, and it has been exaggerated over time. So when we consider the myths of gods and goddesses to be fictional today, the Romans believed that the gods and goddesses were real, and they worshiped them as part of their religion. The Romans believed that gods and goddesses had supernatural powers or skills and were immortal. That means able to live forever. Many of the gods and goddesses that the Romans believed in were very similar to the gods and goddesses that the ancient Greeks believed in. And that means that the people who were in ancient Greek and ancient Rome cultures were polytheistic. That means they believed in many different gods and goddesses. Poly is a prefix. You're learning a lot about prefixes this year in 3rd grade. Poly means many, and theistic means having to do with a god. So when you put polytheistic, you have many gods. The Egyptians, the Greeks, and the Romans were all polytheistic because they believed in and worshipped many gods and goddesses. The gods that we learned about last week, or it was last week, but yesterday, if you're listening to this on a daily rotation, was Mars, the god of war, and Tiberinus, the god of the river Tiber River, Tiberinus. So we learned about 2 Roman gods. Listen today to find out how the Roman beliefs were similar to some of the Greek religious beliefs. And I need to scoot forward. I wanted to have the map out here for you. Here's this legend. There's the river god Tiberinus. In the legend of Romulus and Remus, you heard about a Roman god named Tiberinus, the god of the Tiber River. Remember, according to ancient Roman mythology, or the collection of myths that people believed, Tiberinus was just one of many gods who ruled the earth. To understand Roman beliefs and religion, let us first think about some of the early inhabitants of what we now call Italy, the people who lived there and whose children and grandchildren would later be called citizens of Rome. Back then, before Rome was a powerful city, most people in the area, such as the Etruscans and the Greeks, were farmers. So before the people that we would call Romans, they were farmers, Etruscans and Greeks. Here they are with some very powerful farm animals, trying to get them. Looks like they might be a little stubborn, trying to get them to move. Here is someone who looks like they've collected grapes for grape harvest. Somebody else is carrying a stick, and if you balance that stick across your shoulders and put equally weighted items on either end, you'd be able to carry much more than just in your two hands. And here are some goats or sheep who are being milked for their milk. You would make cheese and perhaps drink the milk, and then you would have wool from the sheep or goats. This is a fresco. That would have been a quick painting, but boy, they're good artists, aren't they? Love it. The life of farmers may seem simple to some. They plant seeds, wait for the plants to grow, and then harvest the fruit of their labors. Some farmers work with livestock. Those are the animals. There's a lot of hard work involved. But even if you're willing to do all the hard work, there's a lot of uncertainty in farming. The weather is the biggest uncertainty. For farmers, rain is precious. If farmers' crops don't get the rain they need, there is no amount of hard work is going to help them at harvest time. That is when they bring in all the food that has been grown that they will need for the coming year. In ancient times, people had very little scientific understanding about weather and climate patterns. They did not have a scientific explanation for why the seasons change or even why day turns to night. All people knew is that they had to survive in a challenging and dangerous world in which anything could happen. You could have floods or droughts, diseases, and plagues of insects, just to name a few. Sometimes things were just fine and farmers could enjoy great bountiful harvests. Other times it rained just enough for farmers to harvest the amount of food they needed. So we know what causes the seasons to change. The tilt of the Earth's axis as it rotates and revolves around the sun. We know what causes the day to turn to night, the rotation of the Earth on its axis in relation to the sun. But people in ancient times didn't know that yet. They had ideas, they observed, they were smart, but they didn't have tools to help them observe like people today, and so they didn't know quite as much. Working in fields all day, an ancient farmer must have had time to think and ask questions about why things were the way they were. Why does it rain some years and not others? Why are my sheep healthy while my neighbor's flock of sheep became sick and died? Why did a flood come and wash away all my crops last year? A farmer who was living in the area that is now Italy around the time of Romulus and Remus might have had answers to some of these difficult questions, but they were not all based on science. The answers were often based on myths or religious beliefs, which were passed on by parents to their children. These beliefs were shared by neighbors and even by the king. An ancient Roman farmer would have believed in a god named Saturn, who was, according to myth, the god of the harvest, who existed before all the other gods. Whether the harvest was good or bad, the Roman farmer believed that Saturn had something to do with it. If the harvest was bad, that meant that Saturn was angry. If the harvest was bountiful, that meant that Saturn was happy. This painting shows a statue of Saturn holding a scythe in one hand. A scythe is a tool used by farmers to cut wheat. Ancient Romans tried to keep Saturn and the other gods they believed in happy. Romans participated in the yearly Saturnalia festival in late December to honor Saturn. It was a time of boisterous celebrations with singing, dancing, and feasting all day and all night. If a celebration is boisterous, do you think it's calm and quiet or loud and busy? I think you're right. Somewhere nearby, there might have been an elaborate temple for Saturn. A temple is a type of religious building in which people worship a god. This picture shows a well-preserved temple that was built by the Romans in what is now the country of France. This temple gives you a good idea of what a temple built to worship a Roman god looked like. Inside the temple, there would have been a statue of the Roman god and an altar or a special table where gifts could be left for the god. Priests were often dedicated to a particular god. Priests dedicated to Saturn lived in his temple and performed rituals to please him. They made offerings to Saturn, sometimes sacrificing a lamb or delivering some other food to the temple to thank him for helping with the harvest. This is a famous temple in Rome called the Pantheon. It was built to honor the Roman gods and goddesses. It is well known today for its magnificent dome or oculus, which is an open eye to the sky. And I need to be able to show you a card, but I cannot show you this image card. This temple right here is not, but there will be a picture of it, and I will try to reference that when we get to it. But there is a famous temple in Rome called the Pantheon. This temple is actually a famous temple, and it is all intact. It was built by the Romans, so it's 2,000 years old, but it was built in France, in one of the Roman cities in France. But the Pantheon, it's well known today for a huge dome and an oculus, which is an open eye to the sky. The Romans improved upon the architecture of the dome, and the dome that's in the Pantheon is the largest of its type in the world known today. So that's one of the types of architecture that we can say that the Romans contributed to society that we still use today, is a dome. Another map should look familiar. The Mediterranean Sea, ancient Greece, ancient Rome, present-day Greece and present-day Rome. Just that we're talking about ancient civilizations. Agriculture was not the only thing for which the Romans had a god. In fact, some ancient Romans believed that the world was ruled by many gods, each of which played a special role in keeping order in the world. Romans were not alone in believing that there were many gods. Such beliefs were common throughout the world at the time. As you heard earlier, the Romans had similar ideas about gods and goddesses as the Greeks and other neighbors in the Mediterranean region. East of the area that is now the country of Italy, here's Italy. So you go north, south, west, east, there's east. There's another area that juts out into the Mediterranean Sea. This is now known as the country of Greece. If you compare Greek and Roman culture, you will find many similarities. In ancient days, it was easier to travel by boat than by land between an area where Italy and Greece are today. Both of those countries are separated by a fairly narrow body of water that is dotted with dozens of large and small islands. So in between here, there are many islands, some of them small, some of them large, but really, that's very close. And it would be easier to go by water than it would to travel all the way along here by land. It would be a much shorter trip. You can see that. Ancient people of Greece and Rome often came in contact with each other on those islands or on one another's coastlines as people searched for new places to settle. This close contact brought lots of trade between people, including the blending and exchanging of ideas and beliefs. Many Romans had heard of Zeus, the king of the Greek gods, who was believed to rule over a collection of gods, including Aphrodite, the god of love, Apollo, the god of the sun, music, healing, and knowledge, Ares, the god of war, and Athena, the goddess of wisdom and understanding. Greeks went to Athena's temple and worshipped her when they needed help with tough problems. She was also considered to be the goddess of war, which is why she has a spear and a helmet. The Romans also believed in and worshipped many of the same types of gods and goddesses that the Greeks believed in, although the Romans had different names for most of them because they had a different language. Some historians would say that the Romans borrowed these gods and goddesses from the Greeks, although the idea of many of the deities may have already existed before the Greeks and Romans would have encountered each other. So let's take a look at this chart. We have it's one page, but two columns of gods. The Greek name for the god is here, and the Roman name for that same god is here. So we have Zeus, the Romans called Zeus Jupiter. Hera was the Greek name, Juno the Roman name. Poseidon, the Greek name, Neptune, the Roman name. Aphrodite, the Greek name, Venus, the Roman name. Eros, the Greek name, Cupid, the Roman name. Ares, the Greek name, Mars, the Roman name. Hermes, Greek, Mercury, Roman. Dionysus, Greek, Bacchus, Rome. Athena, Greek, Minerva, Rome. Apollo, Greek, Apollo, Rome. So there's only one of these gods that was named the same for the Greek and the Roman. But we think that there were probably these gods existed even before the Greeks. There are some names in this list of Roman names that should sound pretty familiar to you. Jupiter, Neptune, Venus, Mercury, Mars. Those are Roman gods, but what else are they? We'll talk about that in a little bit. The Greek goddess of wisdom, Athena, was similar to the Roman goddess Minerva. The Greek king of the gods was named Zeus, and the Romans called their king of the gods Jupiter. Instead of the Greek name Ares, the Roman god of war was called. And instead of the Greek name Aphrodite, the goddess of love was called. This is Cupid. And maybe you've seen Cupid on a Valentine. That's what the Romans called him. Cupid was thought to carry love arrows, and according to Roman myth, he could shoot people with these arrows and make them fall in love with other people. Like the Greeks, The Romans believed that some of the gods and goddesses lived in a place at the very top of Mount Olympus in Greece. These beings were known as the Olympian gods. Some of the myths of the ancient Romans were also similar to Greek mythology. Greek and Roman mythology involved lots of fascinating characters, including monsters and famous heroes. Hercules was one such mythical Roman hero. According to both ancient Roman and Greek myths, Hercules was the strongest man on earth. He was special because he was believed to be part god and part human. His father was Jupiter, king of the gods. There wasn't much that Hercules could not do. According to several myths, Hercules killed dreaded creatures. One such creature was the Nemean lion, a vicious man-eating lion with a magical protective hide. Hercules was sent out to kill the Nemean lion to please a certain king. And after he successfully killed the Nemean lion, he kept the lion's hide to protect himself on future adventures. To many Greeks and Romans, myths helped explain the world. If you take the opportunity to read and study some of the ancient myths, you begin to understand how important they are to our own language and culture today. For instance, if anyone ever tells you that you'll need to complete some sort of Herculean task, you'd better get ready for some very hard work, because it means Hercules himself would barely be able to do it. So, what is a myth? A myth is a story told by ancient cultures to explain how or why something came to be, or something that happens in nature. Are myths fact or fiction? Myths are fiction. So then how is a myth different than a legend? Myths are completely fictional, whereas legends are partly based on factual people or events in history, even though they are usually exaggerated. So that's a pretty good explanation of the difference between a myth and a legend. Make sure that you are able to verbalize that. So if you are in class, would you turn to a neighbor and have your neighbor tell you what a myth is, and you tell them what a legend is? And then you both discuss how they are different. Okay. What did some inhabitants of Rome, the inhabitants of other places that had polytheistic beliefs, do to please the gods that they believed in? Well, they would worship the gods, celebrate with boisterous festivals, perform rituals such as sacrificing animals and delivering food to the gods' elaborate temples. Why were there so many farmers in ancient Rome? Well, agriculture and farming were very important to the ancient Romans' way of life. And why did the ancient Roman farmers want to please Saturn, the god of the harvest? Well, the ancient Romans believed that there would be a bad harvest if Saturn was upset or angry. And so they tried to keep Saturn happy so that they would have a bountiful harvest. So if we were going to compare and contrast the culture of the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans, what would you say are some of the similarities? How are they the same? How do they compare? They were both polytheistic, believed in many of the same types of gods and goddesses. They believed in many of the same mythical heroes and stories. Because they lived near each other, they came in contact with each other often. They exchanged many ideas, shared similar culture. They ate similar food, including olives. What are some differences? They each had their own language, and they had different names for most of their gods and goddesses. The Greek civilization existed before the Roman civilization, and they developed different cities and eventually different countries. Those would be contrasts differences. Okay. Who can point to a Roman god or goddess and give me a short description of him or her? We would need to go back to this. You guys did such a great program on your Greek gods last year. I think you all dressed up in a costume as a Greek god, and you did a report on a Greek god, so you really know that one. If you know the Greek god, you also know the Roman god. It was the same god with a different name. All right. So thank you very much. We will come back and have another story next time.